Hi, I'm Sara Marberry. Today I'm going to talk about what's next for senior living and residential care design in the wake of COVID-19. So let's get started. The headlines and the data have not been good. But besides the words coronavirus or COVID-19, what's the one common term in these reports? Right, nursing homes. And I just want to remind everybody that standalone nursing homes and skilled nursing units are considered residential care facilities. Those of you who are in this field know that. Because in 1965, when Congress created Medicare and Medicaid, it helped to finance the creation of low-budget, state-run nursing homes that have increasingly warehoused the elderly. So nursing homes are where the sickest, most frail elders live, and often the poorest. And many of you know other residential care facilities include assisted living, memory care, and rehab facilities. They were created to sort of bridge the gap between kind of these fun-filled retirement communities that sprung up after the war and World War II and grim nursing homes. But there's also housing, senior housing for the 55 and plus age group. And this did grow out of the retirement community concept that kind of burst on the scene after World War II. Today, as a lot of you know, senior housing includes active adult communities, senior apartments, co-housing, micro-houses, and independent living within life plan communities. But no matter what type of community or facility, it's all age-segregated congregate living. So the big question for the senior housing and residential care industry is, will the pandemic change that? And I think the answer is maybe. So author, performer, and international authority on geriatric medicine and elder care, Bill Thomas, thinks that the biggest headwind for senior living is the cruise ship problem. Because nobody really wants to go on a cruise right now, although I did read recently that people were starting to sign up for them again, which again is the reason why the answer to that question that I just posed was maybe. But, you know, will people want to move into or have their loved ones move into senior living communities or residential care facilities? Again, you know, the answer is maybe, just like some people will go on cruises, but a lot of people won't. Because I think people are still going to be wary of congregated environments. But here are some wise words from Bob Kramer, who was the founder of the National Investment Center for Seniors, and he's just actually launched his own consulting firm called Nexus Insights. He thinks that the congregate living model will not die with COVID-19, but it will have to be marketed very differently. And I agree. And design is definitely part of that marketing story. Kramer thinks that senior living will have to look like and be marketed as a metaphor for being alive, with experiences and engagement and a sense of purpose and belonging. And that metaphor doesn't include entertainment. I mean, it's not about the piano player in the dining room anymore. It hasn't been for a long time, but there's still a lot of that still out there. Providers will also need to develop communities that appeal to boomers now, not when they need care 10 to 15 years from now. It has to be a lifestyle product that focuses on wellness and prevention, along with engagement and human connection, and again, that sense of purpose and belonging. There's a huge opportunity to develop congregate living model, a congregate living model that appeals to younger boomers. And the marketing isn't just for residents. Those who own and operate senior living communities and residential care facilities need to attract and retain staff. The value proposition must be proven through culture and care for staff. And the value of frontline staff and the need to demonstrate support for them has been proven during this pandemic. And there's no going back from that. The marketing pitch is also going to have to include what the community has done to prepare for the next outbreak. And critical to this are operational protocols and design for infection control and technology integration. There's all sorts of great technology platforms out there right now. And as I said before, building design is integral to all of this. Building design and interior design is integral to all of this. So what does this mean for the senior living industry? And when I say senior living industry, I mean residential care and senior housing, the whole thing. How can senior housing and residential care providers and planners and architects and interior designers and product manufacturers respond to this challenge? Well, the first thing is to think small for infection control. Dan Sinelli, who's one of the leading architects in the senior living industry, thinks communities are going to get broken down into smaller independent households. Like this smaller independent household at Jewish Senior Life in Rochester, New York. Residents are grouped in 12-unit homes with private rooms and bathrooms and decentralized dining, which is ideal for social distancing, don't you think? And other small group spaces like this sunroom will also be essential to managing infection control during an outbreak. Large traditional dining spaces like this may be a thing of the past. Smaller cafes or bistros may replace them, or large dining spaces could be reconfigured into smaller, separated spaces using partitions or booth seating. So there's some opportunity there for, maybe some creative design or product design. And I expect we'll see more clean rooms for visitors. This is a temporary one that was set up at Thrive Federica Senior Living Community on St. Simons. And residents meet with their loved ones or friends in 2 adjacent rooms or areas separated by a glass partition like you see here. They speak through an intercom system or mobile phones. But, whether it's temporary or something that's built into the facility, I think that this might be something that's key in the future. And then after, people leave, the staff sanitizes the room. The second design intervention is to build in flexibility for isolation. RLPS Architects thinks that the ability to isolate residents will be crucial to controlling the spread of the virus. Now, I'm not sure what this is going to look like, but already many senior living communities have a couple of isolation rooms. And perhaps designated isolation wings, similar to this rendering of Emory Hospital's Ebola unit, could be another strategy. And maybe there's a place for some sort of modular construction or modular design in the building structure itself, in the walls and so forth. Third, I think it's time to rethink resident apartment design. And while it's not clear if future residents are going to demand larger units as a result of the pandemic, they may be interested in ones that seem better suited for sheltering in place. And what might that look like? Well, again, RLPS Architects thinks that smaller apartments can be designed or reworked so that they live bigger than the actual square footage, as this rendering shows. So it's sort of breaking up those separate little rooms into more open spaces. Because by opening up the living spaces, a larger sense of scale and views can be created. The fourth, since it's harder for virus to spread outdoors, providing better outdoor spaces and access to nature will be critically important. And that's also important for the sheltering place concept. Some kind of balcony or access to the outdoors in residence apartments will also be important. And I think, you know, the message here is if you've got the land, you need to use it to create a metaphor for being alive that I mentioned before. Connection to nature is important for health and well-being anyway. My parents live in a senior living community in central Illinois, and it is one of these communities that's at the edge of town. They've got a lot of land, but the only place to walk outdoors is around the parking lot. And so I've been pushing my dad to push them to put in some sort of walking path. But you know, that's not going to cut it for those boomers that I talked about. You know, a walking path around a building is just not going to be enough, because you know, we boomers aren't going to want to just sit on a bench along a walking path. We want to play pickleball. And by the way, did you know that pickleball is the fastest growing racket sport in America? This is a Touchmark in Portland, and they have pickleball courts. Heck, I want to move there. Number 5 is to design for telemedicine, because it's now gone mainstream in healthcare. And the implications for this in senior living is huge, and it cannot be ignored. It needs to be planned for in building design and infrastructure. And very few senior living communities or residential care facilities have the equipment to deliver remote consultations. There may be lack of privacy and no dedicated support space. And you know, certainly residents could do this within the confines of their own apartments, but for those that maybe don't have you know, big computer monitors or ways of doing this, I think that it's going to be up to the owners and operators to think about how they can provide this for residents. And this is also an area where modular spaces inspired by office workplaces might work well. These are pods that were shown by Steelcase Health at NeoCon last year. And they're quick to install, and they're modular spaces that can act as freestanding meeting rooms with a high level of privacy. 6, air filtration and purification may also become more important in senior living design, possibly driven by future changes in air quality codes. There are many individual air filtration and purification products on the market, like this one, which was part of the Stay Well room concept for hotels that Delos developed. But building HVAC systems should also be reevaluated, especially for residential care facilities that house the frailest, sickest people. Number 7, this is huge. Senior living designers will need to revisit surface materials and cleaning and disinfecting protocols. And this really means choosing surface materials, flooring, furniture, accessories, countertops, cabinets, handrails, doors that are more resistant to pathogens like the novel coronavirus that kills or that causes COVID-19. Creon Ecoactive solid surface material, which is shown in the top right, actually has a new technology that incorporates a series of activators into the product. When in contact with any type of light, it is able to purify the air, expel harmful bacteria, and clean itself. I mean, that has a lot of applications in senior housing and residential care. And when regularly cleaned, copper products made with Cuvero copper on the bottom right, which is shown on the bottom right, continuously kill 99% of harmful bacteria. And certainly Cuvero isn't the only copper additive or copper product on the market. There are many others. And while carpet may not be appropriate or is not appropriate for all areas in senior housing and residential care, research shows that carpet harbors few levels of bacteria than hard surface flooring and is easier to disinfect and sanitize. And, you know, it's also important to remember that viruses also get on shoes. So paying closer attention to the design of the building threshold can also help reduce the transmission of pathogens. Again, here's where product selection can make a difference. There are walk-off mats on the market that contain sanitizing properties like copper. And senior living and residential care providers should also look closely at UV technology that's being used in other types of facilities for cleaning. UVC cleaning products for floors are being used in gyms and locker rooms. And UVC robots are being used to clean patient rooms in hospitals. The UVC cleaning wand that is shown here on the top right is also part of the Stay Well program that hotel staff uses to disinfect rooms. Delos is now offering a similar program to senior living providers that includes the little air purification unit I showed before and this wand. And also, I read an interesting study recently about a commercial UVC vacuum cleaner that had been shown to significantly reduce the amount of pathogens in carpets. So, I think that it's not only product selection, but it is also looking at the cleaning protocols around them and embracing some of this new technology. And finally, senior living needs to take a page from the corporate America playbook and provide areas for respite and fun for staff. This is part of creating a caring culture for staff. It's about giving them a place to relax or get some fresh air where they won't be bombarded by residents who just want to chat. However, break areas and outdoor spaces are often the first thing to be value engineered out to save on space and materials and costs. And I just think that has to change, because design that supports the health and wellness needs of employees is a great way to improve productivity, engagement, and retention, especially among young people. The 10 concepts that the Well Building Standard is based on provide a roadmap for this strategy. And, well building certification can be done in senior living. Meadow Haven Rehab Center in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania is the first senior living building in the world to achieve Gold Well certification by the International Well Building Institute. And if more architects and designers advocate for this, maybe more providers will jump on board. And what about housing? This is Chief Operating Officer Donna Moore in front of the tent that she now calls home at Park Springs Life Plan Community in Georgia. That as of May 19th, when I found this photo and article about her, the staff was still sheltering in place along 600 residents. I think we can do better than tents, though, can't we? Last December, Senior Housing News reported that providers such as Presbyterian Homes and Services in Minnesota are starting to develop employee housing communities. These are basically apartment buildings next to their campuses. But providers may also need to start thinking about how to reconfigure space in their facilities to accommodate temporary shelter for staff. So clearly there's a lot of work to do. But I think the senior living design industry is up for the challenge. Here's a recap of what I think and the other experts think senior living and residential care providers, designers, and product manufacturers should be thinking about in the wake of COVID-19. I talked about thinking small, building in flexibility, rethinking apartment design, providing better outdoor spaces, designing for telemedicine, revisiting surface materials and cleaning protocols, and providing spaces that support staff. Here's a word of caution, though, from architect David Dillard. In preparing for another potentially once-in-a-century pandemic, Dillard feels that the industry may undo years of healthy evolution away from more institutional senior housing communities. I don't personally see the pendulum swinging quite that far, but it's definitely something to be aware of and think about. Before I finish, I have one last thought to share. The US has become one of the most age-segregated nations in the world. And recent research indicates that a third of Americans over the age of 55 live exclusively among people in the same age cohort. And according to a recent article in Bloomberg Business News, a growing body of research suggests that segregating people by age isn't really healthy for anyone, young or old, and that it has helped fuel divisions in the nation's politics. But our society doesn't really seem to be that concerned about this yet. Because Bill Thomas, Dr. Bill believes that over the next 5 or 10 years, we will gradually shift away from age segregation and segregation by ability and enter a new phase to create multi-ability, multi-generational communities that are exceptional for people of all ages. And perhaps that will also include elders and people of all economic walks of life as well, because I haven't even touched on the challenges of serving the low to middle income market in this presentation. At any rate, I think it's going to take a lot of changes to make Dr. Bill's vision happen, but I hope that someday it will. What do you think about what I've said in this presentation? Feel free to email me any questions or comments. And here's a list of the sources for some of the content in this presentation. And also a longer list of relevant articles and blog posts can be found on my website in a recent blog post. So thank you, and please follow my blog at saramarberry.com or connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And if you like this presentation, please share it with others. I'd love it if you would. And to find out more about what I do, visit my website at saramarberry.com. Thanks again for listening, and bye for now.